y'all used to watch Trevor Noah when Trump was
Oh,
president.
I love
Is that the
Trevor.
Trevor?
Watch what now?
Trevor Noah.
Yeah, I love
But you know,
Trevor.
he was only like when Trump was president. Now that Trump was president,
It's real.
he
Yeah.
kind of stopped. Anyway, he would kind of have like the in between show takes where he
Right.
just have random discussions. I
Right.
used to like
Oh,
that.
I like Trevor.
I hear what's his name? Who did Trevor Noah
Jon
replace?
Stewart.
He's coming back
One night a week.
for one night a week
Oh, really?
Right.
for the
I mean,
election
I wasn't-
coverage.
I mean, I didn't follow him as much. I really kind of got into it that show once Trevor Noah took over. I was like, because in my head I was like, what? A black guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and he was really good at what he did.
Yeah.
And my favorite interview with him was when the interview with him and Tomi Lahren. I don't know if you were familiar with who Tomi Lahren
Who's
was.
Tomi Lahren?
So like all the conservative talk show women,
Uh-huh.
you know, she was blonde, young, and she was pretty.
Oh yeah, I know
Of
you're
course.
talking about.
At 22 or whatever, she knew everything about life
Yeah. Right.
enough to comment.
Right.
And so it was also when Colin Kaepernick started kneeling.
Right. Kneeling. Right.
And so, you know, essentially the question that Trevor Noah posit was, what's the best way for a black man to protest?
Mhm.
And of course, you know, her being a
So that was your
white
favorite
woman
episode?
had no clue.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I just think that sports should be political. Really?
Oh.
Yeah, it's
Sports
filled
is
with black. It's filled with black men.
Right.
Right.
You know, giving
Right.
their bodies.
Right.
You know, but anyways, whatever.
I think why you like Trevor Noah is because they were comparing you to Trevor
No, that was
Noah.
before.
Yeah.
I can see that now. You
No,
just
that was
started.
before.
So
That was
I
before.
see that.
That was before because that's when I realized I looked like Trevor Noah. When I graduated med
You realize he looked like
school, and I
Trevor
was
Noah.
watching him long before that. I graduated med school, and my friend from med school sent me a picture, and I'm like, "Why am I in this picture? I don't remember this event."
Oh,
And
wow.
Trevor
No,
Noah.
and it was Trevor
Wow.
Noah. So that's how much we look alike. I'm just saying.
I have to have Trevor Noah on the podcast. It'll be you
I'm just
standing
saying.
there. Right.
Ganger, man. But I think I am a little bit older than he is. I think I'm like older than him by like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Wasn't there a partner that sent a picture? I had a picture of you. He was like, oh, your husband looks like Trevor Noah
Right.
in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was as wealthy as he is. Trevor
Oh,
Noah.
yeah.
Even before coming to the U.S.
Well, I don't know if it's been since the Daily Show
No.
or
I
just
mean,
in
he was
general.
a comedian long before.
But he's
he came
very
to-
wealthy.
He was doing
He's a very wealthy
stand-up
man.
too,
I
right?
didn't know that.
Was he doing
Now,
stand-up?
I will say this. You know, so I don't know if you've ever read about South Africa and the apartheid
Yeah,
system.
definitely.
So you know how in America, you know, you're either black or white,
Right.
You know, and then everybody else is brown.
People of color.
Right. Now, but in apartheid South Africa, I mean, they had multi layers.
Right.
You know, so you were black, essentially pure African, right? Zulu, that type of stuff. And then if you were mixed with black and white, then you were considered colored.
Wow.
Which is why Tia, what's her name? Leah? What's that?
Tia.
singer?
Yeah,
Tyla?
I know you're
That
talking about.
singer,
Yeah.
when they called her black, she said, I'm not black, I'm
Wow.
colored. Because in her head, she's using the South African
Wow.
system
Yeah.
to demonstrate who she is.
Mm.
While in America, you're either black
You're
or
black,
you know what
you're
I'm
white.
saying?
Right,
Right,
right, yeah.
exactly.
I'm black and you're black.
Right,
I don't
exactly.
care. That is white, I don't care.
Exactly.
Well,
So-
you know-
And so Trevor Noah would be considered a colored person,
Really? Okay.
which is
He's from South Africa too,
he's
right?
from
Yeah.
South Africa,
Yeah.
which is with the apartheid system is a step up from black,
Right.
Yeah.
right?
Well-
And then you have Indians, you
Yeah.
have a lot of Indians in South Africa,
Right.
and then you know, then what?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Once again, white being the top,
Right.
Everything else.
And then- right.
It's, I was watching this documentary and it was saying that even a lot of Dominicans whose skin is dark
Mhm.
don't consider themselves black.
Mhm.
And
well, that's because America. Well, no. The reason is America dominates the discussion when it comes to black.
Right.
And so when these people say they're not black, they really mean
they're not an
version
American.
of
Right.
what we consider.
No.
Because in Jamaica, we don't have all these definitions and layers like in America, like in South Africa.
Right.
And so when these people say black, they're going with their definition.
Right.
You know, just like how Tyla was using her definition.
Of black,
You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? And
Right.
in because I've had arguments in med school with, I'm talking about
Hello, Jesse
doctorate
Battle.
level students
Wow.
who said, oh no, to me, you're not black.
Hello, Aunt
you're
Deborah.
Jamaican.
Okay, yeah.
And they would say to Africans,
So
"You're
they
not black,
told you you're not black, you're Jamaican?
Well, because
Wow.
essentially, what does black mean? And in this tone, like someone like me, I would say, well, black is just everyone who's of sub-Saharan descent, right? But to some African Americans, when you say black, you really mean African American,
Right.
Right.
I mean,
which is totally upside down.
Yeah.
You know, but
Interesting.
and so it's become almost like a personal definition.
Right.
Right.
You know,
what is this?
But on the forms, I click black.
Right.
Well, you know, race, and especially dealing with, and I can see folks looking at race, because to be black in America is not only a race, but it's an experience.
Right.
And it's experience,
ethnicity,
right, that is
Culture.
specific to our experience.
Right.
And perhaps if you look, you know, overseas, England, you know, certain European countries,
Right.
but to be black in America is its own thing.
It's its own
Yeah.
thing.
It
right.
is. I mean,
And that's compared to being black in England, you know, which has its own level of experience.
Right.
And because here's the thing, the majority of blacks, and more so maybe 20 or 30 years ago than now, but the majority of blacks in England are descendants
of Caribbean.
Jamaicans.
Yeah.
Really?
Caribbean,
Wow.
yes. Which is
Didn't know
why
that.
the black accent in England,
Is so
Has a Jamaican
Jamaican.
undertone.
Yeah.
Wow.
and so a lot of the
So, yeah.
words have this Jamaican
Yeah.
undertone.
Right.
Like the vast majority of my father's family are in England,
Wow.
not Jamaica.
So you've never heard of the Windrush generation?
Windrush. Wow.
Is it Windrush, maybe?
I don't
That, so there was a ship that so after Germany bombed England and England
They
was
went to
trying
help in the
rebuild
World
from
War.
World War II.
Yeah,
Right.
they went.
They needed
Yeah.
help. Well, who did they get help from? Let's call her black ex-slave people.
Right.
And sure enough, you know, Jamaica, the rest of
It's
the
a
Caribbean, so a lot of us
huge
were
population of them
there
there.
and kind of stayed and
Yeah.
had children.
Yeah.
And so what you end up having is this large black population in England who were descendants of Jamaicans. Well, their parents talked Jamaican, so
Wow.
Yeah.
they would talk Jamaican.
Right.
And so even the Africans who now have children in Africa, you know, take on the persona of the prevailing black culture in England, which is kind of like this Jamaican.
It's
undertone.
interesting. If
Yeah.
you go to
We
like,
have First Lady Doretta Stevens watching, and she is, she's from, we're live. She is from England, and so she commented, and she said Caribbean, correct? That's a good thing.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Wonderful.
it's very, it's
got to go down to Brixton and
All right. Well, we're going to get into tonight's show. Welcome to HOD Live. I hope you enjoyed our pre-show show. Our guest tonight, and we have our live studio audience, including First Lady Marie Battle, Tara is joining us, and Dr. Paul Hannum, which was a guest on week 3 or week 4, perhaps, and his better half is with us tonight.
this is true.
Right. Attorney Monique Hannum. So we're here tonight to talk about a lot of different things with from everything from Jamaica and oxtails.
We do owe you that.
You do. To legal matters and to estate planning, getting your
Yes.
house in order and things of that nature. Your resume is quite impressive. And I was looking over your website today. And one of the things, you started studying law in Jamaica, correct?
I did.
And then you had a role or position with the Attorney General in Jamaica. Can you share with me your journey from practicing or studying in Jamaica to where you are today?
Sure. So thanks for having me,
You're
first
welcome.
of all. And thanks for reading my resume.
I did.
So the journey from Jamaica to here, when I graduated law school in Jamaica, and really it was a mixture of Jamaica and Barbados, more of a Caribbean experience when you do law in the Caribbean. I started working for the Attorney General's Chambers, and they kind of threw me into this section that was called General Legal Advice, which was great. It was like any section of the government, as long as it wasn't criminal law, could turn to me and say, this came up, what do we do? So it would be things from, is this constitutional or not, to there was a car accident involving a fire truck. Well, who's liable? It could be we're trying to pass new laws to deal with how do we go after money launderers.
Wow.
And so the scope was just so wide. And so it kind of gave me a very good introduction to law. I had promised my parents that I would practice for at least 1 year before I left to them and got married. And so I did 1 year in a few months. And then I left my job, packed my suitcases, and I moved to North Carolina to get married.
Really? So
That was
was marriage your reason for leaving Jamaica and coming to the U.S.?
Yes.
So you had met your husband, Paul, prior in Jamaica. He
Right.
relocated first, and then you came
That's right.
afterwards?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
All right.
We met as kids, so.
Oh, good. Okay. So once in North Carolina, you picked up the study of law. I think you worked as a legal
Legal aid lawyer.
aid lawyer.
Not really.
Mhm.
I there was a period of time there after immigrating to America that was very depressing for me.
Wow.
So I had left and I came to America assuming that all of America was like New York or California.
Mhm.
And so I could do the bar exam and study really hard and then get to practice.
Right.
But not so. So in North Carolina, you needed a JD, a Juris Doctor degree, before you could do the bar exam. And so I think I was really sad for a while because I couldn't do anything. And I had this calling,
Right.
to practice law, and I couldn't do it. And one day I went to the gym and there was this older gentleman working out, and he started telling me about how he went to legal aid for help. And it just dawned on me, just go volunteer. And so I volunteered with legal aid for about a year and something, just to keep doing something meaningful.
Keep yourself busy,
and purposeful.
around
yeah,
the law.
Yeah.
So then from there, you decided to actually get your JD. You went to Vanderbilt, which, by the way, is one of the top law schools in the nation.
Wonderful law school.
Wonderful law school.
Yes.
And you started in Vanderbilt, and then what year did you graduate Vanderbilt?
Did I graduate Vanderbilt by, was that
2015.
2015? Yes, 2015.
What at Vanderbilt, what area of law were you toying? Now you do estate law. Was there ever a time you wanted to do criminal law, get back into government law? Was it, be like the next Johnny Cochran or
Never. I never had any interest in criminal law. Never did. I think I had wanted to get back into international law, which was where a lot of my focus had been in my earlier studies. But no, by Vanderbilt, I was just excited to be in school. I had been a stay-at-home mom for a little bit.
You're
And
sick
so-
of the kids, sick of Paul.
I wouldn't say that I did cry like the first few days. I did. But it was exciting to be in a classroom.
Right.
It was exciting to learn. I was energized. I was like, yeah. And so I really enjoyed Vanderbilt. But that was more when I started learning. Oh,
Right.
so the American approach to law is quite different. There's a lot more focus on economics. There's a lot more, you're just considering different factors from a traditional English
Okay.
law system. It's a little bit different.
So then you decided to get into estate law, which describe to me, and for people that don't know, what is estate law? I know what estate sales are. What's estate law?
So estate planning,
Mhm.
yeah. It's, for me, estate planning is taking care of business before you pass away. And that looks different for different people. But for the most part, you're looking at having a plan as to what
Right.
happens if you're one,
Right.
disabled or incompetent and you can't take care of your own affairs or take care of yourself. And the second component is you want to take care of what happens when you die.
Let me back up and ask
Yeah.
you. So estate law actually covers if you are incapacitated. In my mind, estate law was obviously, wills and
Mhm.
probate and
Mhm.
where you pass away, but it covers too in the case of incapacitation.
Yes,
Wow.
it does. And so a significant part of my practice is helping sometimes it's parents
Mhm.
who have disabled children,
Mhm.
and sometimes it's children of parents who have progressed to maybe a level of dementia or just sickness, illness, where they can't take care of their own affairs. And so that's a huge component of estate
State
planning.
law.
Yeah.
Really? So how would a state law step in and handle a situation where, let's say, there's a husband or wife, parent, who becomes incapacitated
Mhm.
and can't take care of their family, can't pay mortgage or take care of the children? How does a state law impact that?
Yeah. So there are two ways that you could approach that, right? So if a client is coming to me and they're proactive,
Mhm.
then we're going to do one. We're going to do durable powers of attorney because we want to make sure there's somebody in the driver's seat.
Right.
Okay. But this has to be done before the person becomes
Right.
incapacitated. Okay. Now, a lot cheaper, a lot better on the front end to
Exactly.
address it at that
Yeah.
point. Now, if they come to me after the person has progressed to a point where they can't sign those papers, they can't make those decisions, then we have to go to probate court.
Mhm.
And we're doing what we call a guardianship and maybe a conservatorship to put that person in the driver's seat.
Is there a chance that if there's a head of a household who has
Mhm.
built up and amassed a nest egg of fortune,
Yeah.
wealth, is there a chance that they could lose that if they become incapacitated? The state could take that, or it could be used towards medical care or the
Mhm.
hospital. I mean, is there a chance you could lose what you've worked for because you don't have things in place?
There is a chance,
Mhm.
but there is a potential to try to protect your property, your assets. If you become incapacitated, but it's a very it's a difficult balancing that has to be done. So for example, I'll have clients who'll say, well, I don't want Medicaid to come in
Right.
and take this money.
Mhm.
And so I want you to put it in a special kind of trust, for example. So there's some trust plans that will avoid those things if you do it right and if you do it early enough. But that also means that you are taking it totally out of your control and you're handing it to somebody
Wow.
else, right? Because as long as you have control over those assets, it is an asset that the government can reach and that they might want to tap into.
Right.
But I think there's also another question, which is, well, who should be bearing the cost of your health care if you have sufficient assets? So if you've amassed enough to take care of yourself, should that be something that the government covers or social welfare, or is that something that you pay?
Right.
So it's a very delicate balance. And do you want to
Yeah.
give up that control
Right.
to a child
Right.
or a family member?
Yeah.
Because you will lose control
And
totally.
right, and that's something that brings up a whole nother avenue, because I've seen a lot of times where seniors have signed things over to adult children, thinking
Yeah.
that it was going to be safe, thinking that this adult son or daughter had their best interests in mind.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes when it comes down to money,
Yep.
if that parent doesn't set things up in place and simply goes on trust,
Mm-hmm.
they're greatly disappointed, because
Yes.
then all of a sudden a new Charger pulls up in the house, new clothes, new
Yes.
jewelry,
It's
and
abused
those assets
sometimes.
they get abused.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
How aggressive does the state come after nest eggs in those events? Let's say someone has to go in a long-term care facility, nursing home.
Mhm.
Is the state going to tap into their savings before they kick in to start paying?
So, before you even qualify for those state programs, you're going to have to do your spend down, right? So you're going to have to reduce your assets.
What's the spend down?
significantly. It's getting rid of assets so that you meet the minimum. So you're
How
at the
do you
minimum.
do that?
Depends. So let's start with the fact that there's a 5-year look back
Mhm.
period. And so if I go and I apply for Medicaid, then they're going to look at my transactions and my assets for the past 5 years to see if I have handed things off to somebody else to avoid having anything in my hand when they come looking.
So let
right?
me make sure I understand. So they're going to look 5 years prior
Yes.
to see if you're handing money out and
Yes.
asking family
Yes.
members to keep
Yes.
money. That happened to your
Yes.
father, didn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, my
yes,
wife's father.
Yes.
So they're going to track to see what you did with
Exactly.
your money. Okay.
Exactly. And so, if you're thinking of doing that kind of planning, then you want to do it early so that window, that look back period doesn't hit you. Another option, though, is, long-term care. That's a good way to go. If you can pay for long-term care insurance, and that is going to help tremendously. The policies are expensive, but in the long run, they help.
There's a question from Denise Bryant. She says, how does long-term health insurance tie into senior living facilities? And I don't know if that's something that
It's not my area of expertise, but I think when I have clients who come to me who are about to go into long-term care facilities, they're looking at about maybe $10,000 per month.
Wow.
So that's a significant chunk.
$10,000.
$10,000 per month. And if let's say your life expectancy after you have advanced dementia, is, let's say 3 years. So now you're looking at 36 months at $10,000 per month. Even if you sell your home, in most cases, that money is going to burn out before you pass away. And so I think the clients in the best positions are the ones who are paying for that long-term care insurance to take care of them during that period. And so whatever they've saved is not being tapped into. Now, I've heard, I do have clients who are paying maybe $15,000 as a premium per year for that long-term care insurance. But if you compare it to what you'd be paying the facility, you see it. If you can afford to get it. And the earlier you get it, the cheaper it is.
Yeah. So after the spin down and all of their assets are secured, then hopefully the state will kick in and they won't lose their assets essentially.
Right. Okay. Hopefully that will be the case. Right. Now on the probate side.
And what is probate?
Probate now is after you've passed away and we have to deal with your estate in the court system, right? And so when I do my estate planning sessions, my goal is to avoid probate as much as possible because it's expensive, it's slow, got to go to court, it's very public. And so if you can find ways to avoid probate, then, that's normally a good thing. Okay, you had a question.
How do you avoid probate?
And that's going to take a little bit of explanation.
Okay. So I think I want to avoid probate.
So we're kind of switching gears. And that's the thing. Estate planning is so broad, right? So we were kind of going down the road of disability planning. So now we're switching gears to planning for death, right? So if probate happens, if you have properties, debt, assets, right, that you are not transferring in a way that does not need to be dealt with through the courts. And there are ways to do that. So for example, you're married, you own property with your wife, right? If you're owning your property jointly, when one of you dies, the next person is going to inherit it, right? You automatically become the owner because you survived. That's one way of avoiding probate. So joint ownership is one way, right? Then you have other ways. So in Missouri, there's this great thing called the beneficiary deed. And I kind of plug that quite a bit on my my Facebook videos because it's a huge deal. Not every state has it. But essentially in Missouri, you can have a piece of property and say, I want when I pass away for this property to go to this person or these people. And you record that beneficiary deed and it takes effect immediately on your death without you having to go to court. Stays outside of probate. It is one of the most efficient, effective ways of transferring property. Now, you got to make sure you do your title work. It has to be recorded. There's some legal things that you have to make sure you've done, but that is definitely one of the easiest ways to, and cost-effective ways to avoid probate. So there are things like that you can do. Joint ownership. I tell my clients if they come in and all they have is some bank accounts, for example, I'm going to say go to the bank, make sure you say I want to do a payable on death designation on my account, because that's going to keep it out of probate. Because it's like you have a contract with the bank saying when I die, just give my money to that person. We're not going to go through probate then, right? If all you have are a few cars and trucks, well, go to the DMV, say, I want this to transfer on death to this person. It's going to keep it out of probate. So any of those techniques and mechanisms that are there that you can use, that's a very easy, cost-effective way. And my philosophy is every single person should have an estate plan. I don't care if you're a millionaire or if you just have a few $1,000s, because estate planning is going to look different based on who you are, what you got, and who you're trying to take care of.
That's so true. It's such a good point, because what happens, I think, is that folks, for whatever reason, it's like going to the dentist or to get a physical exam.
Yeah.
And that's something you need to do, but you put it off, you kick it down the road. Death, we never know,
you never know. That's
happen.
Right. Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's happening to younger people, married people, people with kids. And there's a lot of folks that are just not prepared for death. I had a rather traumatizing experience once that corresponded with your first presentation in this church with estate planning. I went to go to the hospital to make a hospital visit. And so as I was walking into the hospital, I met this lady who was in distress. And so I had just come from church. I was still on a sermon high, feeling like a vessel of God. I still had that anointing glow about me. You all know that what I'm talking about. And so I go and I say, is everything okay? Is there anything I can do for you? And so she says that my son is in the hospital. My son, who must have been around my age, was in the hospital, adult son. It was they had just put him in surgery. I said, can I pray for you? She said, I would love you to pray for me. Then she turns to me and says, like a Stephen King movie or some horror movie, she says, get your house in order.
Oh my, that's deep.
Get your house in order. And so, it's hard to shake stuff like that. And immediately after that, I started to rebuke that. It was first, but upon driving home, and that was a week after you approached me about having a estate planning class in the church. And we're actually having another estate planning class that's open to anyone on not this Sunday. I believe it's next Sunday. I'm going to look at my calendar and get the right date for you. But another estate planning class. But at any rate, I came back, and at that time, I started to really look at what I had, in terms of investments, because I knew if I were to pass away then, I was not ready. I didn't have stuff, lined up, basic things. And so I really began to take that seriously. I got another call this week from someone in a rehab center. And they were saying that I guess one of the social workers came in and asked the question, where do you want your body to go to? And this was traumatizing to them. And so I said, well, I just made funeral arrangements for myself during the same period. So it doesn't have to be traumatic, but it's something that's going to happen. And so it makes better sense to plan than not to plan, because it affects your witness. If I pass away and my wife is destitute, or my son doesn't have, whatever he needs to finish school, to start out in life, then that affects everything I said in life. Because instead of being a man of prudence, taking care of my family, I become a joke because I didn't have things in place to take care of my family. And for me, this is why this is so important to talk about estate planning. And for people listening who are saying, well, I don't need to, that's not me, I don't need to know this. You do need to do this.
It is important. And I think a lot of it is shrouded in mystery, or, or we think it's a rich folk thing. But there's just so many ways. I say to my clients, there are many ways to skin a cat. I've never skinned a cat, but you get the idea. So sit down, have a conversation. You talked about investments, and I will have people come and they have to go through probate because they just never listed a beneficiary on their brokerage accounts. That's totally unnecessary, or your insurance policies. Name the beneficiary, go check, routinely and make sure you've got stuff up to date. And that alone will go a long way. Then I think the other big thing is for parents like me with minor kids, you have to really think, if I'm not in the picture, what do I want to happen? And
Right.
who do I want to have my kids? And for me and Paul, it's we do a will, and
Right.
we might not have a trust right now, but we set up a trust in our will
Right.
saying if something were to happen to both of us,
Right.
then this is what we want to happen with our
Right.
children. And you kind of set something up for them in
Right.
that will. But personally, it took years for me to have an
Yeah.
estate plan.
Okay.
Because I'm like, I can't afford as a new lawyer. I was like,
Cybertruck. Wheel that to your
I'm
pastor. Put me in the estate.
yeah, I'm like,
I'll
what?
think of you all. Every time I drive, I'll think of you all.
And then I moved to rural Missouri, to Cassville, and so many people actually had a plan.
Wow.
And so the question is, why don't we have a plan? I mean, here's my thing. If you can buy a latte, once a week, if you can buy certain purses, you can have an estate plan.
Question, in our community,
Yeah.
you see a lot of blended families. You see stepchildren.
Mhm.
You see ex-wives,
Mhm.
baby mamas, baby daddies. Just a whole mix.
Yeah.
I've been in cases as a hospice chaplain where, upon death, immediately before they wheeled the body out of the house, fights broke out between who's going to get what,
Mhm.
who's getting the jury, who's getting the car. Even so much as when things started to go south, people would hide things.
Oh, yes.
There was an incident where at a funeral, the man was in the casket, and all of a sudden there was an uproar near the casket
Oh, my God.
because the watch that he was wearing was no longer on the corpse.
Whoa.
And so the
okay.
pastor had to stop the funeral and say, whoever took the watch,
Oh.
please
Whew.
bring it back. But people become vultures. How do you begin to have that conversation? In dealing with stepchildren, how do you do that?
I try to tell people it's best to say what you want. So if a client will come to me sometimes, especially elderly people, and they might have some guilt. I don't want to leave for this person, but I want to leave for this person, but it's going to look this way. I say, well, you're the boss. You work for this. This is your estate. What do you want? Make it clear. The clearer you are, the easier it will be for those who are going to come afterwards, right? You don't want mixed messages.
Right.
And so that's why we do, for example, a will. And then I tell them, here is what will happen if you do nothing, right? So there are default rules. We call them the rules of intestacy that say who gets what if you do nothing.
All right.
Okay? So we're going to start with your surviving spouse, which kind of at the top.
Spouse, right.
Surviving spouse is going to be at the top. Now, that raises another question. What's a surviving spouse? So, I've had people cry in my office because we've been together for 10 years. We did everything together. Now he's dead and the kids came in and I'm not getting anything. And
Wow.
because legally you're not a spouse. And so, that's kind of where you start, because you can be investing for a very long time with absolutely no return, if you want to call it that, on your investment. But we start with a surviving spouse, and there's kind of a split between surviving spouse and kids. If you're sharing all those kids, the split is going to be different from if they're step kids, but you're kind of on the same plane.
How does that work?
So if you're a surviving spouse and you share kids, you get an extra like $20,000 as a spouse, and then the rest you split in half between, spouse gets half, kids share the next half, kind of deal.
Okay.
Because the expectation is that parent is going to leave to those same kids,
I
right?
see.
Does that make sense? Yeah. Versus if there's no surviving spouses and we go to the kids, they split equally. You have no kids, no spouse, and we go to your parents and your brothers and sisters. And so there's a hierarchy that is established, and that's what we're going to follow. That's just a rule. So if you want anything apart from that rule, then you're going to need to do a will. You have to set something up.
So a will, that's where a will is different than probate or the what's the thing that
Intestacy,
right.
like the default rules.
Okay.
Yeah. And the will has to go through probate. So we have to remember that. And there's a 1-year time limit to get that into probate before a court. But that's the only way to avoid really those default rules.
Question: If let's say in my will
Mhm.
I allocate so much money to this child, this
Mhm.
child, this child. I only have one child, but
Yeah. We got you.
this child.
Hypothetically.
Yeah, hypothetically speaking, my wife is over there wondering where all these other kids are. But is there a way, once, let's say I identify my will, what I want,
Uh-huh.
after I pass away, is there a way that survivors can challenge what I want and take it to court and reverse what I want?
Yeah, well, people can always file lawsuits, right?
Uh-huh.
So it does happen. Generally, when you do that will, you're going to say, you define who your children are, and you'll say, anyone I haven't named, I've intentionally omitted, right?
Wow.
So you want to have that language in there. If you have multiple children that you know of and you're disinheriting a child, you're going to say, I intentionally am not providing for that
In
child.
the will you
In
name.
the will. And people get very uncomfortable with that.
imagine.
And I say, well, if you want this to really work,
Right.
this is what I'm going to recommend you do, because we don't want them to be able to say, well, they omitted me because it was a mistake,
Yeah.
they forgot or something like that. And I will say with Ancestry.com and all those DNA testings, it's really
That's my daddy.
it's throwing things for a loop. So that is something that you want to think about.
Right.
Now, I have clients who will say, well, if it's my kid, then I want them to be provided for from a moral standpoint. And then you have clients who are like, well, I don't know who's going to show up, from
Right.
maybe my dad's, I don't know, like
Right.
maybe it could be a second cousin or something. And so they want to close that door.
Right.
So that's something to think about. But not planning it can be a problem. I remember I had one lady die, and she wanted everything to go to the child who came home and took care of her for years, but she didn't have a will. And so the son who was estranged came and he got half, just like the child that she wanted to get everything. And then you get weird scenarios. I've had the separated spouse, show up because they want to be in charge of the funeral. They want the body. So things happen. And so it's much better to spell out what you want. And the other thing I'd say too is, if you're young, maybe you're an entrepreneur, don't assume that you're going to be around for a long time, because I've also had the parents who are retired and, they thought, I'm going to get to rest now. But the 30-odd-year-old kid dies, and now they have to be
Grandkids.
Yeah. And not just that, sometimes they might have a business or something. And now your dad or mom who's 70 has to step in the probate process to try to figure out this business that you left behind to take it through the process.
Well, that's the thing about the law. The law is very exact and detailed, and it's not this touchy-feely thing. And so to get your house in order requires that tough thinking and to really identify what you want, what your wishes are. It's a good exercise to really, and this I think is a side benefit of estate planning.
Yeah.
It makes you reflect and take stock on your life. And it makes you look at your life from a position of, if I'm not here, and to intentionally think about your legacy, which is something where a lot of us don't do.
Yeah.
And to do it early is a benefit, because if you lay everything out on paper and realize that if I pass away today, my spouse doesn't have enough, my kids who may be in elementary school can't go to college, then maybe instead of, getting that latte or wasting money, you start planning your finance, your budget around.
Get an insurance policy.
Get insurance policies, right?
Yeah.
One question I have though, and also if you have a question, type comment your question online. We'll get to it, share. Just type 1 in the comments if this discussion is helpful to you. What if there's debt? How if I pass away and it looks like I'm balling? It looks like I have a Cybertruck. I won't let. I'm in name brand clothes.
Yeah.
I remember the country club and all these things. Go out to Olive Garden, right?
Well, we're not going to get back that money. I mean,
No, what I'm saying is, so everyone believes that I'm well off.
Not from an Olive Garden.
Right. Hey, don't hate on Olive Garden. You had a good time there last week. So,
Sorry,
you had a
Vicky.
good time. Soup, salad, eggplant. So, but I have a lot of debt. If I leave behind my debt, who handles that? I mean, if there's no money and it's just debt, is there anything I can do to protect my family if I know I'm in debt and I'm leaving behind,
It's a tough one. I mean, if you've got nothing, you've got nothing. The question is, do they have something that can be taken or attached legally? In most cases, so are you leaving behind any property at all?
Let's say
like
the
nothing?
mortgage is let's say I'm behind a month in the mortgage.
Okay.
Let's say I'm behind a couple months in the car note. Let's say that. Right. Calm down.
They just
So
need to
let's
just
say-
come day that stuff.
I know. I'm gonna have to ask this studio audience. So let's say I'm behind in
Yeah.
the mortgage, behind in the car note. I have judgments against me.
Mhm.
A lot of things happening, and spouse doesn't know anything about it. No one knows anything about it. Can they go after the house when I pass away? Can they go after the, recover from the bank account when I pass away? I mean, how devastated can a spouse be if they are completely unprepared in terms of what that spouse has or doesn't have? I hope that
Yeah.
question makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Your creditors can always go after that stuff after you
Would they
pass
be
away.
required to pay if it's
It
under me?
depends.
Wow.
It depends. So you're talking about a situation where you're married, right? So we know in marriage, the whatever assets and debts you accrue during the marriage are marital, right? And there's also this thing where I'm liable for whatever my husband does that's like necessary. So
Right.
medical care, etc. And so there are certain things that definitely can be pursued against your spouse. But let's say you have joint debts, you have joint assets like the house, you have a bank account, for example, and one of you passes away. A lot is going to depend on whether or not somebody opened a probate estate, right? So when I open a probate estate, one of the first things I'm going to have to do is publish in the papers
Mhm.
and say this person died. The PR is this person, the attorney is this person. If you have any claims, you have 6 months to file those
Wow.
claims. And so those claims are filed in court. And there's a 6-month window. So I tell people probate is the only time you say, hey, over here, sue me. Which is why
Yeah.
we try to avoid probate when we
Right.
can. You know what I mean? But like, hey, sue me. I'm over here. You got 6 months. Come
Right.
on. Yeah.
Wow. Hopefully nobody buys the paper, right?
So
That's when you go around town and buy all the news.
claims are then filed. And so a lot of times you'll see the credit card companies coming in and filing their claims. If there's a hospital bill, they're going to file their claims. The mortgage companies, they normally wait a little because they've already got a lien on your house. They're just
Yeah,
going to,
okay.
sell it or whatever. You mentioned bank account, like debts from the bank, they're going to file their claims.
Okay.
And then it's up to them whether or not they're going to go ahead and prosecute. If there's no money though in an
There's
estate,
nothing.
then that's it. It's bankrupt or it's not liquid, and it kind of ends there
Yeah.
unless you're also on that debt, right? So if you are on it too, then they can pursue
Right.
you.
That's that's something.
It's
And
tough.
I guess part of that is when speaking with young people or single people, the importance of getting to know who you're going to marry and
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
real discussions and wives and husbands
Yeah.
about the status of the finances, because
Love is all that matters.
Reverend Paul, love is all that matters.
I don't know.
Paul.
I had a
What's
client.
the credit score? I need a credit application that goes with the marriage
Yeah.
application.
I had a client one time that had she was just shocked. She's going through the finances, and it turned out her husband had gotten mortgage on their home that she didn't know about.
Wow.
And she didn't know until he died. So, I mean, yeah, it happens. So you want to just be very careful.
I have a question that has come in. I heard you once say that if someone was once married and divorced, if they get remarried, the former spouse can get rights if no will is established. Can you explain that process?
If they were married and divorced and get remarried, former
So different.
spouse. That I'm hoping I hadn't said that. So
Maybe the children you're probably referring to.
maybe the children, right,
Oh,
right. So the children of a prior marriage are still going to be your children, and so that's what I was mentioning.
I
That
see.
split between stepkids and the current spouse. The only time I've seen former spouses have rights is if things were allocated to them in the divorce, and that process wasn't totally finished, and then the ex spouse dies, and then it's a whole other mess because you're like a creditor, like the bank coming to collect.
Right.
Yeah.
So, as a new client, let's say
Mhm.
I interact with your law firm, I find you online, I show up in
Mhm.
your office, I have nothing. Walk me through the steps of
You
what
have
do.
nothing?
I mean, I have assets. I have assets. I have an Olive Garden coupon. Olive Garden. Is all
I don't think you'll get past
And I
Moya,
want to leave
Pastor.
it to my wife. I want to leave my Olive Garden. Yes. And the Cybertruck model. I want to leave it to my son. But if I have assets, and I want to start with estate planning,
Yeah.
what would you do as a new client, me coming to the office?
Okay, so we'll sit and I'll say, tell me about you. Tell me about your life. What's important to you? And I go back to, I think it's like third grade English.
Mhm.
Who, what, when, why, how.
Mhm.
Okay. So I want to know, who are the people in your life? Who are the people that you're responsible for that may be dependent on you? Or who are the people that you care about, that you're leaving your legacy for?
Right.
And then we're going to go into the what. What do you have? Now, if you only have an Olive Garden coupon, I'm going to say just put that in a drawer somewhere and say, hey, I left this for you in the drawer, So that's the what. The when. The when is important. The when is, do I want you to get this after I die? Do I want you to get it when, if I'm disabled,
Mhm.
right? Do I want you to get it after you turn 25 or after you graduate from college? Because the mechanism we use is going to depend on that kind of when, right? That's a part of the
That's
planning.
right. So part of the plan, I can actually set assets up to go to someone at these benchmarks
Yes.
of their life or of my life.
Yes.
Oh, that's
And so when I do, if we're doing a trust, that's a huge part of it. I and even in a will, a lot of times, I don't want kids under 25 coming into much money. Their brains are just not ready.
Even after.
And so we kind of don't want distributions until about 25. And then after that, there might be other milestones. It might be if you're going to college, your first car, your first house, your wedding. So you have these benchmarks. So the when is important too.
So let me to make sure I understand. So part of my will would be that I would set up a trust. I'm leaving assets to my children, but I'm doing it via a trust.
You
so
can
that
do that.
I can do that.
You
If
can
there
do that.
are, let's say they're 9 and 10 years
Exactly.
old now.
Yeah.
I want to say at the age of 25 or when they go to college,
Mhm.
then this money is released. to them.
Right.
But
right.
that has to be specified in a will.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
called a testamentary
I see.
trust. So we know a lot. We talk a lot about living trust or revocable trust,
Mhm.
irrevocable trust. So there are those trusts that you create
What
while
are those?
you're
How do
alive.
those differentiate between what we're talking about, that kind of trust?
Those are trusts that you're going to create while you're alive. They will be effective while you're alive.
see.
You're
Okay.
funding them while you're alive. The testamentary trust is a little bit
I
different.
get you.
It's a will, but you're saying there's a chance I might die
Mhm.
before these people were to benefit reach majority or mature enough.
Right.
And so I want to make sure there's somebody else in charge of the money. You can also say who you want to be their guardians as well, which is a huge deal if you have like,
That's
huge family or
huge.
multiple
That's
people
huge,
right. who want to come in, specifying who you'd want to be their guardians as
Can
well.
I ask you about that?
Sure.
In terms of guardianship, how would you advise people to start handling or entering in that conversation? If something happens to me, I want you to be the guardian of my kids. How would you even begin to select or have that conversation with people?
That's a tough one. And I usually it's because a client comes in and I know they have minor kids. And so when they say, Ms. Hannah, I want to make a will, I'll say, well, you have minor kids. So let's talk about that. Is there someone in mind that you have that you think would be a good replacement? And you can't really replace you, right? But if you're not there, who is the best proxy then for you? Who is going to align as closely with your values and your style of parenting? And then we want to name that person or those people in the trust. And then usually you also give them control over the assets.
Mm-hmm.
You take care of, their health, education, maintenance, and so on.
So with that guardianship, you're also funding them.
Right.
Now,
And to clarify, you're nominating this person and saying, this is who I want. There is a formal process that will take place later in the courts
after you pass
to
away.
ratify that.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Would you recommend having a conversation with this person saying, hey, I'd like to list you as my...
Definitely.
Okay, good.
Definitely. You don't want to spring that on somebody. You don't. And it's one of those times when clarity might be awkward, but really important, right?
That's so true, because I imagine there's a lot of folks that you would think would take your kids, but then you'd ask, do you want my kids? Nah, I'm good.
No, we'll do the holidays,
Right.
but so we had gotten, I was going through the list. We got to the when.
Mm-hmm.
Another part too is you can do gifts during your lifetime, right? You can say, when I turn 70, I'm gonna give this person. Now, of course, talk to your tax person, your accountant, to make sure you're filing whatever gift tax, what do you call it? No, returns you need to be filing. But that's the when, and then the how is important as well. The how is, like I said, you could be doing a joint ownership.
All right.
So some parents will just put the kid that is most responsible and helping them on the bank account too, and it's joint. Now, if it's joint, it means they can wipe you out. So there's a level of trust that you want to have before you do that, or transfer on death, payable on death, a trust, a will. So the how is, what is the mechanism I'm going to use? So when you come, I'm trying to figure out, do you want the Cadillac model or,
Right.
the base thing we can do all TOD, POD, beneficiary deed. We're going to go the cheapest route, not the best, but maybe that's what you can
Right.
afford. And maybe that's what your assets required. Or maybe you have significant assets and we need to be thinking about a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust and a will, pour over will.
Right.
And then, of course, I'm going to tell you, get your powers of attorney done. Always.
Good.
That's a basic.
Do you
powers of
also
attorney.
handle medical powers of attorney?
I do.
Oh,
I do
good.
healthcare powers of attorney.
Talk about the necessity or the benefit of having one of those in place.
Oh, wow. That is huge. And not just having one, but making sure it's durable, right? You want it to keep working if you're incapacitated. Here is what happens. I'm going to give you a scenario of what happens when you don't have one. So I'll have a client, parent, several $1 million. They're trying to do certain transactions with the brokerage account. Parent has now become advanced and he's in advanced stages of dementia. And so the financial advisor is like, okay, we can't do anything right now. I'm sorry. They come to me. They want him to do a power of attorney. Well, no, he can't do it anymore. He's past the stage to do it. He doesn't understand anything. He doesn't understand money, He doesn't know if it's today or tomorrow. He doesn't know the day of the week.
Right.
So when I said, and I'm talking to that client, because I'm having a conversation to figure out where the client is mentally, right? I'm going to say, well, I'm sorry, but he can't do a power of attorney. So what do we do?
Wow.
Well, I'm going to have to file a petition with the court for someone to be appointed as a conservator of his estate to take care of his finances and for a guardian to take care of his health care. And so then you're filing paperwork. You're going to need the doctors to fill out certain forms. And then I'm filing paperwork with the court. Then we have to get that person served. Right. So your parent is going to have to get served. And then we're going to have to pay for a court-appointed attorney to represent them because you're taking away their rights now, right? You're trying to. So they have to get their own attorney. Then we got to get a hearing. Got to get the evidence in. And most times the judges.
How long does all this take?
It depends on how quickly I work. But you're looking at a few weeks most times. The fastest I've gotten one is maybe 3 weeks. And if they have significant assets, you're going to have to get bonded because there's a chance that this person runs off with the money.
Right.
And then, beyond that, even after someone is appointed, because we have to have a hearing where we prove to the court that your parent is incapacitated and also prove that you're suitable to be the one to take care of them. After that's done and you even have your papers in your hands saying you have power, now you've got to file accounting with the court. Now, if you want to pay you want to buy them a TV, you got to say, Judge, can I buy them a TV? And so it becomes a very involved process for the remainder of their lives where you're constantly interacting with the court system just to do, I would say, your duty as a child, or as a loved one.
Right.
And so the durable power of attorneys is really a powerful way
It's huge.
to not be in that predicament.
And
So-
it's so funny. Well, not funny, but unfortunate that a lot of people, they think of that. They only think in terms of a older person getting sick.
Mhm.
But this also comes to bear for a 25-year-old
Oh,
that
yeah.
gets in an accident.
Oh yeah,
Who gets into who has a slip and fall or some
Mhm.
type of interaction.
That's a good point. And for the younger people, what I always hear is, nobody wants to give up control. You don't want to give up that control over your life and your decisions.
Right.
And so I say to them, well, I have a perfect solution for you, right? And people don't talk about this a lot, but you can make a power of attorney that does not kick in until you can't make your own decisions.
So you can make a medical power of attorney
And
that
a financial
is not
one.
active, financial,
Mhm.
until and unless I'm mentally or physically incapacitated.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good.
It's called a springing power of attorney. So I tell my clients, I say, look, this is not going to spring to life until
Right.
you can't do what you need to do.
Good.
And
Yeah.
then we set it up so that, either you can say my doctor, if you have a special doctor, you want to be the one to make the decisions. Some clients are very cautious. They want 2 doctors. So
I think I want 2 doctors. I don't know if I trust my son.
Yeah. Some people want a spouse and a doctor, it depends.
Right.
It's who you trust. You say, I want these people. When they say Monique is kind of gone and you don't want her making decisions, and at that moment it will spring to life. So that's an option.
Yeah, this is so fascinating because all of this, again, forces you to take a good, hard
Mhm.
look at your life
Yeah.
and to look at, who you are, what you've done, how many people you trust.
Oh yeah, that's a huge part of it.
Because
That's a
you're talking about
huge
taking
part.
my kids, I'm trusting you with my money. Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you do the medical power of attorney, they also determine when or if they're going to pull the plug on you, correct?
If you give them that power.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, my medical powers of attorney are pretty detailed. So you have the section where you're dealing with HIPAA, who gets my medical records. But then you also have the section, what if I'm to go to a nursing home? Who rejects treatment? Who decides on surgeries or medication? And then you have usually a separate component, which is your living will or your advance directives, right? And so you're saying now, okay, so if I'm in a coma, persistent vegetative state, there is no reasonable expectation that I'm going to live or be able to ever be, have a level of consciousness, and then what happens? And then I have my clients go through and check, okay, do I want you to give me chemotherapy? Do I want you to do radiation? Do I want a respirator? Do I want to go home to my family? Do I want invasive surgeries? And some people will check, I want you to keep giving me food and pain medicine, but I don't want anything else.
Right. And it's an ugly reality. And this is that if God forbid someone ends up in that situation, that the next of kin is fighting for their survival. And that may or may not be true.
And so
That's a
clarity is
reality.
important.
Right.
Clarity is so important.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, it's a different burden to be the one to make the decision to pull the plug. That's a very different decision from my dad or my mom said, if this were to happen, this is what I want. You need to do this. Right. It lifts apart. I don't want to say it lifts the entire burden, right, but it makes it lighter.
Well, breaking news. If something happens to me, I do not want her to pull the plug. She says those are my wishes. Those are not my wishes. Fight for my life.
Okay, well, that needs to have two witnesses and be notarized. Too, right? Okay. So we're gonna need a little bit of ink on that.
Well, it sounds a lot like this whole process in some ways is even more important if the event that you live and something has happened to you that incapacitates you, as opposed to just passing away.
That's an interesting way to put it. And I think that's true. And it's not something I thought about initially. Mm-hmm. This is something I've learned the longer I'm practicing. It's like earlier in my practice, I did a lot of wills. And then I'm stuck in probate. And my clients are stuck in probate. I'm like, well,
Is that like purgatory?
If you want to spring some more money on the front end, we could do a trust and your family can skip all this. No, I mean, the lawyers, I guess, get paid anyway. But, but it's all, there's certain scenarios where you definitely want to do it. I have clients who want to leave. I had a client who wanted to leave her house or a church. And, well, if you want to leave stuff to a charity.
The church.
Her house.
Her house. Okay,
mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Well, we got to do a will because this is something special. I've had clients who wanted to leave things for their pets or for a charity. And you got to do a will because those people are not going to fall naturally in the line, right? Or if you want to skip your kids and go to your grandkids because they're real cute, then
a lot of complexities.
You're going to have to do something special. So, yeah.
That's very interesting. It's almost as though sometimes in talking about this, people don't understand the need to protect what they spent their life to earn. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of predatory financial advice, this thing. And I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but I see the commercials on TV about reverse mortgages. How if you give this company your house, they'll pay you per month, but once you pass away, they own the house. And I've heard very strong arguments against that. I've heard some for it. But there's a lot of things out there where people are not really protecting what they have. As a pastor, and for all pastors, if we don't put our house in order, and if we leave and our wives or if it's a female pastor, husbands are destitute, then it reflects negatively on the wisdom of that person while they lived. Yeah. Because we don't stop being judged simply because we die. Right? So setting up, putting your house in order is extremely important. Taking time to actually sit down and talk to an attorney is worth the effort that it requires. And even the mental trauma of having this discussion, because it forces you to confront your demise, which some people need to do because some people need to get saved. Some people need to come to church and realize that at one point this ride is going to end, right? And so just the benefits of doing this is extremely important.
Oh, yeah. Clarity is crucial.
How does someone access you and your law firm? Tara, would you see if O is there out there?
So my law firm is Hannum Law. We're in Wentzville. There is a website, hannumlaw.org. We're on Facebook. And our phone number is 636-398-2076. If you reach out, if you go on our website, there should be like a contact us form and you can do an intake and say, hey, I need an estate plan. Generally, what will happen then is my assistant is going to reach out to you, set up an appointment. The consultations are free. So I'll tell you a lot of clients walk out with a plan,
Right.
kind of mostly joint stuff and TOD
Right.
and whatnot. Then they'll come back.
Right.
But we'll sit, we'll have a talk. Usually they last about an hour
Wow.
because it's usually that intense, trying to figure out what works best for you. And then from there, we just go ahead and we come up with a plan.
Right. I have a question from a guy, Paul Hannum. It says, what do you say to a parent or grandparent who does not want to make that decision or make a will or estate planning because they feel they are having to choose?
Well, I think they're choosing anyway. They're choosing chaos. They're choosing chaos.
Dad,
and-
say that again. Let me write that down. That's a good thing.
Yeah, you're choosing anyway. You're
Choosing
choosing
chaos.
chaos. You're choosing
Wow.
chaos, and I think relationships deteriorate even more at
Yes.
that point,
Wow.
because then people's perceptions are different,
Mhm.
right? So I'll have a client who thinks this kid was being pampered or coddled. The other client thinks, well, mom was too hard on me or dad was too hard on me. You'll have one who thinks grandma wanted everybody to get the house. And the other person thinks, well, no, grandma really wanted me to get the house because I'd take care of it and you guys didn't care and I will keep it for the whole family, right? And so the relationships really deteriorate when there isn't clarity.
Wow.
You don't want chaos. You just don't want it.
Uh,
And then the legal system gets more money out of you. So
Wow.
so heads up, probate, the attorneys are going to get their fees. There's a statutory schedule. It goes from like 5% down to 2% the bigger the estate gets, right? And you're not going to escape that. So clarity is definitely
it
better.
behooves you to begin to learn
Yes.
and to put
Yes.
your
And that's why
affairs in order, right?
probate lawyers love probate, because
Wow.
that's how we get paid. So
I bet you've seen some horror stories of things that have happened in terms of sessions and things that have come out in, people are not prepared, or even during the setting up phase where people went into this thinking one thing was going to be the
Yeah.
case. Then after the death, something and secrets were discovered. All these women were around the casket that Terry, he's on this other side. He's on the other side. I'll tell him coming in. And what happens is I'm not telling you anything first, lady. This is part of the hypothetical. And having clear decisions. Come on in. Oh, have a seat over there. Having clear decisions is a part of that whole planning process.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, I've seen quite a bit. I'll say that, but it's always the unexpected that hits families, So, and intestacy, those default rules, I think a lot of times affect people. So, I'm trying to think of a few things. So, for example, I mentioned, if you have a will, it has to be probated within 1 year. Got to take it to the court and present it within a year. So I've had situations where families, there was a will, but nobody thought they needed to do anything.
Right.
And so, the child who should have gotten 100% of the family farm ended up with like a 1/6, or you have the grandparent who's now trying to take care of things because no plans were made, right? So a lot of times it kind of happens like that. And once people have in their head that this was what mom or dad intended, and you have a different idea as to what they intended, there's no one to break the tie.
Right.
There's no one to come in and say, well, here's what I really thought. And so it really, really just goes downhill from there.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Paul, you come on up. I want to bring you on camera. This is Paul Hannum, who is one of our past HOD Live alum. They're both members here. And their story is fascinating. Not only did they immigrate from Jamaica, as you heard in the pre-show, but both of them have just launched and started their own practice, which is absolutely remarkable, right?
She's crazy.
And so the House of it is. I mean, it takes a The House of Health is fully functioning. Your law firm is fully functioning, starting and creating their own law firms as opposed to working for other, healthcare systems or other lawyers is absolutely fascinating. And taking your own future in your own hands. And I think that is a remarkable, just an inspiration for people. And you gave a testimony once that I keep hearing people say when I think it was Watch Night, you challenge people to take a leap of faith or step out. And I wish that we had more African American people of faith, saved people, taking steps of faith and doing things and pursuing interests. And maybe it's not, quitting my job, starting my own thing, but doing something to, how do you know if God will not bless something if you don't give him anything to bless?
That's
right?
true.
So
that's true.
Just to do what you've done is
I don't
quite
recommend
remarkable.
quitting the job until the new business is
Say that
taken.
again.
Yeah, I don't recommend quitting the job until the business is when it costs you more to not be at your business.
When did you all know to stop, to cease and desist from working for the man? When did you all make a decision that you're going to launch out and start your own, hang up your own sign or start your own endeavors?
That's a good question. I mean, a part of it was a drive to Clayton. A huge part of it was not being there with my kids.
Right.
And so I really needed to craft my own practice.
That's powerful.
I really did. And so now, if the kids have to be out of school, they're in my office, go read a book or, they've had some long nights. They know what it means to work hard. They've set up our furniture. At one point we had an air mattress because they had to sleep there because we're working so late. But I think this provided the right balance.
Right.
And there isn't this noise, this voice in the back of your head that you could lose your job for having an unpopular opinion.
Wow.
And I don't have anyone telling me this is a client to take or this is a client not to take.
It's your choice.
It's my choice, and it's a choice I make prayerfully
Yeah.
because I believe God leads my clients to me,
Wow.
and I want to be that attorney.
And you know what? This is what favor looks like in terms of your story. And no one can deny that there were many difficulties immigrating to the U.S.
Yeah.
Learning a new language. I'm just playing.
Wow.
You never heard that before, have you?
I have.
Immigrating to the U.S., but working, studying. Paul, you were in the Navy. And so it wasn't here and comes that you were corpsman in the
Right.
Navy.
Right.
Working, going to law school, having kids, establishing it's nothing that was handed to you, but the favor of God on your life.
Definitely.
And being a couple that has done so much. And we in our community are so willing to highlight the worst of our community. We really need to begin to celebrate those in our community that are striving and doing wonderful things. And they're role
And
models.
there are
because-
lots of us.
Yeah,
there are
well,
lots
they
of
are.
us.
But the kids, they're not going to be Jay-Z. They're not going to be, sports.
player.
Yeah.
This is what real success in terms of what they can attain looks like.
Yeah.
And it's very important to highlight that.
And just to chime in on the decision thing, we talked about it a lot. We probably talked about it for 5 years before we even decided. And sometimes, your boss will make the decision for you. Like in my case, I was hanging out with a gentleman who owned a clinic in St. Charles, but we just did not jive because even though he didn't have a license to practice medicine, he thought he did.
Wow.
And he would tell me how to treat my patients, etc. And I think, and so one day I said, I essentially decided that my children were more important than his clinic, which was okay. And then he treated me like a child. You need to take a week to think about what you did. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
and-
So you took the week, huh?
Well, I took the week, and then I said, "Look, I'm not your child
Right.
that you need to punish.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, I'm a
Yeah.
professional, and I make my decisions based on what's best
Yeah.
for me." And so I guess he didn't like that. And after that scenario, we parted ways, and I said to myself, "Okay, I can either keep subjecting myself to this,
Mhm.
or I can forge my
Yeah.
own path. So I have
Mhm.
nobody else to blame but
Right.
myself."
Yeah.
And so for me,
Yeah.
that was one of the biggest ways. And so we just
Forced to
kind of
make a
said, "Hey,
decision."
let's just do it."
Yeah.
And you talked about God's hand on our life. He blessed us enough where at that time we had just enough money where we know that we could probably afford the first month's rent. We could probably
Refurbish a
afford some of
building.
the furniture. We could,
Yeah.
in my
Beautiful
case,
building.
refurbishing
really
the,
did
the,
it really
the building.
good. Yeah.
And so I'm happy that we
Yeah.
made that decision.
I mean, from my end, we planned for him, not for both of us. So me deciding to leave
So
my
as
job
he was talking, you had no idea on the radar that you were going to.
Oh,
Wow.
no. I like getting paid. So that was not my thing. But it got to the point where I could not be as good a mother while doing law the way I was doing it. And so I had to make that
Priorities.
decision. And I had I couldn't have any peace at night. My dreams were, I just knew I had
Wow.
to. It was like, God was like, okay.
She was also driving 2 hours a day.
I was driving 2 hours a
Really?
day. Yeah. And so, yeah, we needed to make a change, but it's scary. It's very scary, but it's rewarding too.
For some reason, there's not a lot of good because I want to qualify that, risk taking in our community, which is crazy because as people of faith, the definition is to kind of reach and feel and step out and things like that. And I know that
I struggle.
yeah, it's a struggle for everyone. But, if you want to do something that's never been done or that's great or that's a little bit of challenging
Yeah.
or a little bit of daunting, or you have to put yourself out there. You can't do it from the safety of kind of just the conventional
Oh yeah,
whatever.
that's true. That's true. That's true. But in our case, I mean, for me personally, like everywhere I turned, there were all these God moments. There were all these people that were strategically placed in that location
Right.
at that time, or this building that happens to be there. And all of those people have been very instrumental in me reaching where I am, but it's definitely a faith walk. and I'm thankful for it.
And it's you kind of have to be ready to lower your standards a little bit. When I say standards, I mean if you're used to a certain car or having the heat at 75.
Please don't talk about the heat.
You really have to
You're trying to recreate Jamaica in the
right,
house.
right. So,
We can't touch the thermostat.
Right. And the point is, you really have to kind of be ready to kind of tighten that purse string and say, okay, we have a goal. Let's meet this goal before
Yes.
we open the purse string back.
Yes.
And that's not always easy.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think if you're ready to start out on your own, you
got
kind of
it.
have to have a
You
plan
do.
and stick to it. And if you don't,
You do.
Yeah.
And the kids will come and say,
Right.
Mom, are we close to
let's just say the kids pray for us to have more money.
Yeah, like,
God,
Lord.
we're praying that mom and dad are successful. So
That's
that
one
we
way to
can
get
do
your kids
this
to
and
pray.
do that.
Right.
That's the way
That's
to
right.
get you.
Well, you guys have a remarkable story. Thank you so much.
Thanks
Let
for
me
having
let me
us.
get the date that you're going to.
Oh, yeah.
Let me
think
do
it
that
was-
real quick.
Sister Tara. I know.
Sarah,
Do you have the calendar?
Where's the? Where's
What-
the?
what-
where's
what-
I
the-
thought it was
date
a
for what?
Saturday, though.
The date for
Um,
I thought it was.
I
It's
have
the
it-
17th that you
Yeah,
said.
that's a Sunday.
Saturday.
Is that a Saturday?
Yes, it's a Saturday from 11 to 2.
Okay. On March the 17th.
February the
I'm sorry.
17th.
February the 17th. From what time to what time?
11 to 2.
11 to 2 p.m. There will be a free
Will's Workshop.
Will's workshop here at the House of Deliverance Church. So that is
Very stress simple, Will.
Simple Wheels.
Simple Wheels.
You got a lot going on, and your family tree is very expansive. We might need to talk after.
Right. So that is Saturday the 17th.
From
11 to 9355 St. Charles Rock
Yeah.
Road. Also, if you have further questions, you can contact attorney Monique Hannum. And also, if you're sick and you are suffering, contact your husband, Dr. Paul Hannum. And these two are a wonderful couple.
In that order.
In that order, yeah. And see him, then drive. How far is his office from your office?
About 15 minutes.
Drive 15 minutes, see her. And they'll get you right. Let's give them a wonderful round of applause. Good people, wonderful. Well, thank you. Yeah, we're still on, and we're actually going into O is here. We're going into a Super Bowl pre-party sports discussion. You guys did an awesome job, and Monique, I made sure that we went longer than Paul.
Are we talking for that long?
Yeah, we did about an hour and 20 minutes. Yeah,
No.
it went fast, so didn't it? No, it was good. It was good. The discussion was awesome. What's going on? Oh,
Nothing much.
how you doing? This is the after party here at HOD Live.
After party.
This is my brother O Alfian. Is how you say your name, right?
Alfian.
Alfian. What's your last name? Alfian.
Jones.
Alfian. So you have a unique first name and a common last name, huh?
Yeah. My mom knew someone with my name, and she had the very
Alfian?
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm 2.0 according to him.
Really? What's
Upgraded.
what's Alfian mean?
It means moon in Nigerian.
Moon.
Now the funny thing is, it took me my whole life to find that out.
Really?
So what happened was I was late in my 30s. I was like 35, and I was working at a warranty company inside of Rankin Technical College where I graduated. And this kid came in. He's looking at my name tag on my desk. He's like, "Oh, my dad's name Alfian." I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's nice." And then he comes back the next day. He says, "Your mom named Brenda?" So yeah, good, named after my dad.
See, we just talked about that.
Right. And so his name is, the funny thing about it is his name is Amsumnu.
Amsunu.
Amsumnu.
Okay.
But they call him Cain for
Amsunu.
short. It means blessed. It means blessed in another language, but that's the thing where he's looking at me crazy because he wanted my name instead of the name that he had.
So is that why Erica calls herself Erica Moon?
Yes.
I just made that
Well,
connection.
she had the name.
Erica, give us a shout out if you're listening.
She had the name when they called her Moon when she was born.
Really?
So when she came out.
That's something else.
Now she'll tell you the story that when she came out, she had like these very big eyes. They was like, "Oh, look at her face; she looks like a little moon," and that's how she got her name. And then she runs into me,
your name,
and it's like my name is Moon in Nigerian. And when she got back on Facebook, I made her change it.
Oh, her name. I thought her name still is Erica Moon.
It's still Erica Moon,
Okay.
but it wasn't at first.
Oh, so you made her put Erica Moon.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have that kind of control. You control.
I try, man.
Wow.
I try. Some things I do.
That's
man.
something
Some
else,
things
isn't it?
I do.
Let me take notes on that. Now, Erica just chimed in. She said, "My mom called me Moon," so she gives you no credit for that. No, she does say it was meant to be.
Yeah, it was.
So, Alfian, you play the piano, keyboard, organ, bassoon, bass.
Yeah, man. I play.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah, I play mostly bass and keys, but
You play the bass?
Yeah, I did
Wow.
play upright bass the whole time I was in school, and then I guess I was in my 30s trying to raise kids, and fell in love with the keyboard, the piano. Somebody bought a little organ to the house I had, and I kind of started playing on it, and then I made the jump and decided to get serious about music.
How old were you when you started on keyboard?
I was about 35.
Wow.
So I've been in music ministry for a little less than 10 years now.
I talked to Larissa Jones lately, no relation, but Larissa Jones, and she was saying she picked up a keyboard like at 40 years old, and one day decided to start playing the keyboard,
Yeah.
and went in the basement, started playing the keyboard. No musical. I thought she had lessons as a little girl.
As God gave it to her.
Yes, God gave it to her.
Yeah.
There's stories of the Azusa Street revival where people who could not play anything just sat down and began to play.
Oh yeah. And I think my background from her was a little different because I guess I was pushed out into playing for a church very earlier on in my learning. So almost everything that I learned as far as how to play, I had to learn in church during the service.
Among a friendly audience.
Yeah, where they was
supportive.
really happy and they was really nicely telling me I didn't know how to play.
Yeah.
Until one day I could, but it takes a while, to win them over.
Okay. Well, we are here to talk about, like I said, this is a sports after show. We're
Yeah.
kind of debating and giving our sports expertise. No, all of our knowledge about sports and the Super Bowl part. I've stated publicly that I care as much about this Super Bowl as I care about the price of tea in China. I could care less about the Chiefs. I could care even less about the 49ers. I don't like either team. I don't like Brock Purdy. I don't like Mahomes. I don't like Taylor Swift. All my teams
It's
lost.
almost like she's a part of the team.
Right, exactly. It was a sickening season. Every game they would cut to Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
You know.
And I have a cousin that actually plays for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh wow! So invite him to
It's,
church. What are you doing?
But he's playing on Sunday.
Well, you don't have to come this
But
Sunday.
yeah, he has to come eventually. But his name is Tershawn Wharton.
Oh, wow,
He's a
okay.
defensive tackle. He actually got a sack in the last game.
Wow.
On Lamar Jackson. He was very proud of that.
Wow.
So, but yeah, they're proud this year because the defense has literally had to carry him.
Yeah.
Where in years past, had to carry the defense.
Right.
So he's, they're doing a pretty good job.
I think Kelsey, this is going to be his last year. I know Kelsey, his brother Eagles retired. And I
Yeah.
think, his body is just more. And then, truthfully, with the Taylor Swift thing, I think he started to see life after football. I had a conversation with a young man who played in college, and the amount of your body you sacrifice for the game. There was a story about Aaron Hernandez, who was a tight end for the Patriots.
Yeah.
And he, was a star player back when it was Gronk and Brady.
Mhm.
And he went on this killing spree.
Yeah.
And he ended up, going to prison for life. And he murdered 2 or 3 people. After they opened his head up, they discovered he had all of this brain damage from
CTE.
concussions, right? CTE. And so the amount of your body you sacrifice for the game is tremendous, and almost it's a trade-off because kids getting drafted into football, in some cases even basketball,
Yeah.
you have to weigh whether or not the money is worth older in life really being crippled.
Yeah. And the average career in the NFL is what, 3-4 years long?
Right, the
And
average
so
career.
you're not, what a lot of us think is good health. Your career could be ended on any given play. And what we see is guys pushing up against each other. A lot of times it's happening at such a high speed that you're
Right.
not able to look around you.
No.
And especially when you're talking about lower extremity injuries,
Yeah.
knees, and with wide receivers and running backs, you're talking about concussions because
Right.
you're getting hit at high speed.
And it's happening to kids because what happened is I'll have a kid that's good in sports, and the whole thing now, when I was coming up back in my day, if you were good in sports, you play high school sports, that was it.
Yeah.
But now they've made a 24/7 with the different leagues,
Oh, yeah.
and a lot of these kids are sacrificing their bodies even before they graduate.
They're
Well,
playing high school, they're
High
playing
school,
college.
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
high school, and then in the summer they're playing. What is that thing called?
Summer camp.
No, not summer camp. A league that they play.
oh, XFL and
No, I mean like the young people.
oh yeah,
They play the different leagues and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But yeah, so the your cousin plays for the Chiefs.
Yes.
Oh, that's real good.
Number
so I guess
98.
you're rooting for the Chiefs. Huh?
Yeah, I better root for the Chiefs because I ain't trying to get that smoke my way. But also,
We have a real live Chief fan we captured. A real live in the flesh, a Chiefs fan.
but the thing is, it's just good to have, because certain members of the family go to the games and you see them on Facebook, or you see us constantly making trips to and from Kansas City to support them. And it's really, in that sense, it's really good. I was kind of in my head before they got to play the Chiefs. I was kind of rooting for Baltimore this year.
I was strongly rooting for Baltimore.
But when it didn't happen, I was like, well,
You switch.
I had to. Because for a minute, I just was kind of out of football for a minute. I was like kind of disillusioned with the way things were going in, and the whole, we were protesting the national anthem for a minute. I didn't like how that situation turned out.
So you turned it off.
So I turned it off for about a year or two, and then kind of gradually came back. Kind of when I guess Brother Dornell and Brother Preston, they were
Pulled
big
you out of your
Cowboy fans, and then they gave me another team to hate on. So
the collapse of the Cowboys and the Eagles
oh yeah,
were phenomenal. The Eagles, they started the season. They should have been in the Super Bowl.
yeah.
But all of a sudden, they just melted down.
I think the 49ers played a big part in them not being there because when they 49ers played them, the Eagles were like 11-1, 11-2. They were really good, and the 49ers beat them so bad. They didn't win a game after that.
Yeah, but the 49ers, they're not as good as they were in the beginning of the season either. I mean, they started to show their own struggles. In fact, I'm predicting that the Chiefs will win. Because I think the Chiefs have a better team. There was a lot of Brock Purdy hype in the beginning of the season. And I don't think Brock Purdy is nearly as good as people are trying to make him out to be.
I think Brock Purdy, well, first, I'm going to give a shout out to Brock Purdy because he is a man of God. He reads the Psalms.
Let's not make it about that.
He reads Psalm 23. He was doing an interview during this
Let's not
week.
make it about this.
And I am hoping he's very generous and giving to the other team a few interceptions and turnovers. But it is very interesting to see because the 49ers do play a brand of football that when we think about football and the physicality and you're going to run the ball and make somebody want to quit. That's what the 49ers do. They beat your quarterback up. Their defense is really tough to get them off the field. And the offense is a very physical offense. They run the ball from so many different formations.
But
and
who do you
tough
think's
team.
going to win?
Kansas City.
Again,
And I have to give, not just because my
write
family,
all that until Kansas.
not just because my family plays on the defense, but it's just the fact
Very
that
political.
it's just the fact that my man Mahomes they can beat you so many ways. They used to beat you throwing the ball up and down the field, and now with the
They won because they gave it to them. The referees called that thing against the Eagles.
So we're hearing someone that knows absolutely
They
nothing.
stole it last year. They were given the game last year, so
I would say that the Kansas City Chiefs took their game away from the Eagles last year. 'Cause
Those refs gave it to them.
But I just think the Chiefs play a game that when it comes to crunch time, they, even with the receivers not being as good, even with Kelsey getting old, their running back is pretty good this year. He's kind of developing. But they just find a way to win.
They had a lot of drops this season.
Oh my goodness.
AC has had a lot of drops. This game is any person's game.
Oh yeah.
The Ravens beat San Francisco earlier in the season.
Yeah.
The Ravens should have won that game even against
The
KC,
Kansas City,
right?
yeah.
And just to have this season was completely up and down.
Yeah.
But to be at the end of it and see it's KC versus the 49ers is kind of, especially looking at what the Lions could have done.
Oh, yeah.
They haven't been in playoffs for so many years.
And that's another reason I say Brock Purdy. If they had Trey Young or if they had a Garofalo quarterback in that game against the Lions, they would have lost it easily.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Because he brought them, he made the plays, got them back. He had almost a perfect second half. So I'm going to give him that. He in crunch time against the Lions, he did what he had to do because the Lions should not have lost that game.
They should not have. The another thing, following the storyline of Lamar Jackson, early in the season, you had a lot of sports writers, and sports writers say that Lamar Jackson was not a quarterback; he was an athlete, which had tremendous racial overtones. Whenever there's a black quarterback, it seems as though some sports writers want to question his legitimacy because there's still a sentiment in America that a black man is not smart enough to be a quarterback.
Well,
And so I was hoping that Lamar Jackson
could
would
overcome
go all the way to show, that he is, and I think he did to some extent, but I was hoping that he would win, get to win Super Bowl because, I had I don't interject race in everything.
Right.
Contrary to what some people believe. I do not interject race in everything. I'm not someone, but you cannot look in any facet of American society and not see race.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a reality. And I know, and that's not to paint with a broad brushstroke. I know there's been a lot of achievements. I know that it doesn't apply to everyone, but there's still a lot of racial overtones and prejudice that are applied to people of color or colored people, right, Paul? That kind of diminish or want to put an asterisk by our success. And they're fine with us being running backs, linemen, but to diminish Lamar Jackson's credibility as a quarterback. In fact, one sports writer said, he's not a real quarterback. I mean, that's horrible.
And I think a piece of that got to him because the Ravens, when they got down in the Chiefs game, they started trying to, Lamar started holding the ball, looking for open receivers, and no one was getting open, which is how my man got a sack the other week. But the thing is, if Lamar would have did what he normally would have did when things break down, I'm going to run and get yards, I'm going to get these first downs. And, if they'd have stuck to their normal game plan, then once again, I thought, they had a good chance of winning that game. And we saw that a lot with Cam Newton.
Right. That's right, Cam Newton diminished him.
When they got to the Super Bowl, they kept him in the pocket.
Right.
They didn't let him run around. Right. And just a few other quarterbacks.
Even in Denver, you see a lot of talk about what's his name? Wilson. I mean, every black quarterback has faced that criticism where it's not just about the game, but it's a special sort of criticism that comes with a black quarterback.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the two main positions of leadership on the football, you look at head coach and then you look at the quarterback. Those are the two faces of the franchise. Right. And when you see that a lot of those faces, especially when it comes to the playoffs or when it comes to them even getting the opportunity to beat it,
right,
a lot of them don't look like us.
No,
when you see Lamar Jackson where his hair is twisted or done a certain way and he has a certain accent that we recognize is from the hood. Right. And, we all, I say from the hood, but we all kind of resonate with somebody being from a situation, especially in a city like Baltimore.
Right.
So we want to see, because the city's going through so much and it's so impoverished, we want to see something good for them.
Yeah. And,
so I think eventually they'll get there. I think that he has to understand that you don't have to impress anyone you're not Joe Montana. You're not these guys. You're not Peyton Manning. You're not Tom Brady. But I think Lamar Jackson, if he embraces the fact that he is a running quarterback and he becomes the weapon that he is, I think that they'll be right back in the fight.
Well, you hit it on the head because Lamar Jackson, he is unapologetically who he is.
Right.
And a lot of times, some of the quarterbacks, some of the athletes, they go into sports and they have a makeover. Yeah. And and it's okay. You have some, I think Russell Wilson is truly, that's who he's always been.
Right.
He's always been his personality, his style, right? He hasn't tried to change himself to be more mainstream. He really was always Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
I think even with Dak Prescott, who always is Dak Prescott. I think with Lamar Jackson, though, had he switched and kind of become more more mainstream, like you said, twist his hairs
Right.
and stuff like that, then he would have seen a level of acceptance greater than what he currently has.
But also, Lamar Jackson, when he had his contract issue last year, he sat out in the playoffs.
yeah,
And a lot of people would not have, look,
Right.
I ain't got my
Right.
contract done.
Right.
I'm not coming.
Right.
A lot of players have played. Joe Flacco won the Super
Mhm.
Bowl on the last year of his deal.
Mhm.
A few, and of course, it worked out for him.
Mhm.
But where's he now? But it's just the
Yeah.
issue of a lot of these quarterbacks, especially like Dak Prescott, got hurt in the last year of his deal.
Right.
You are risking a lot of money and a
Right.
lot of opportunity putting yourself out there, and you don't know if they're going to bring in a new
Right.
draft pick to replace you or what the situation
Well, he
is.
took a lot of criticism for not playing because he wanted to work out his contract, and a lot of us were sports fans. Oh, he should be out there. He's letting the team down. That's his business.
Yeah.
That's his paycheck. And at the end of the day, sports is not about for them rooting for team. It's
No.
their livelihood.
Yeah.
And so that was a business decision. It's almost like I was watching the college football playoffs, and there were quarterbacks like for USC.
Yeah.
He said out, I'm not going to the bowl game because if I get injured in this bowl game, I'm missing millions of dollars for the NFL contract. And then these broadcasters
Mhm.
were questioning his. No, he doesn't love the game, and he's, how could he not? He has
His
no
body more.
right. It's his body,
Especially when it's one of us.
Yeah.
So especially when it's one of us
Right.
and we're like those defensive ends that sit out and they have to give what they
Right.
because if you're getting picked in the NFL,
Right,
especially if you're a high pick,
right,
that's transformational money.
absolutely, right.
And I think me and my wife, we have a guilty pleasure now looking at tours of these $10 million homes.
Yeah, thank you all.
Take care.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. We've gotten to a guilty pleasure of looking at these expensive tours, and it's like for you to get that,
right,
you can't go out here
right.
for nothing less than your maximum amount of
Absolutely.
leverage at all,
Yeah.
and you can't afford to come into your rookie season with a blown knee, and
Yeah.
because the more time you spend second, third, fourth round, that's less guaranteed money.
Yeah.
And that could be the difference between you being the starter,
Right.
going into practice season, or you having to come through a practice squad and get on. And that's a lot of money.
Right. It's a business decision, and it's something that I think that to be successful in anything, you have to be good at filtering out the noise.
Yeah.
Because we live in a world where everyone thinks they know what you should do, how you should do it, what you should be, how you should handle your business. At the end of the day, you have to know what you need to do
Yeah.
and not let the criticism, because everyone else has motives
Mm-hmm.
beyond what's in your best interest.
Oh yeah, and that
Yeah.
applies to every facet of life. Not only just sports, but even
Sports,
music,
yeah.
and especially now that church is kind of going a certain way.
Mhm.
A lot of people are really, I call it armchair quarterbacking. Oh, you should have did this, or if you did this, it would have been this way. No, you can't. It's hard for you to sit in somebody's shoes.
Mhm.
And especially when they're, the financial security of their family is on the line
Right.
behind them being able to play this sport.
Or even just the ability, you mentioned church and things like that. It's the financial aspect in terms of personal life, but it's also, as you get older,
Mm-hmm.
you want to be comfortable with looking in the mirror and not being ashamed of yourself.
Oh man.
And so part of it is knowing one of the worst things in life is to know what you should have done, could have done, but not doing it because you yielded to the pressure. And I think one of the things that COVID was a blessing in disguise,
Yeah.
in the sense that, obviously during COVID, the house lived, we stayed open, right?
Yeah.
And that was a break from a lot of the wisdom of the day.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that it did do is that whole thing when churches were forced to do their own thing, whatever that was, it established a sense of independence that is very good because, at the end of the day, you have to lead based upon what you and what God, your conscience and your convictions are.
Yeah.
And you see so many people giving up their convictions for expedience.
Oh yeah.
You know?
I think I heard it best when we talk about the integrity. Your integrity can't be bought with any amount of money.
Right.
You know, if I just go run after money, of course the money is nice, but look at what I have to deal with to get the money.
Right.
And so your integrity should always be a step ahead of any money that you make. And, you know, when I was coming up in my early days of working in the automotive field, we talk about loyalty and commitment, or loyalty and dedication. If you don't have those two things, especially when we talk about to God, to family, to yourself, you know, because these people, they would give you a bag of money, and then when they're done with you, they would throw you away. and in sports is like that, where if you could be balling out 200 yards a game type situation, and then next season, the moment you got a hurt knee or something, you got to cut them.
You know, that's true. As you get older, I read this quote, as you get older, when you're younger, your life is about amassing stuff.
Yeah.
Friends, money, education.
Yeah.
As you get older, life begins to strip you of stuff. You start to lose people. People start to pass away. You start to lose your health. You start to lose your mind. Can a gay man come over there? You start to lose your mind. You start to lose different things.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And at the end of the day, you stand and you have to give account for who you are and what you are. And it's tragic to look back over your life and then realize that you kind of gave up what you knew was right or what you could have done for the sake of expedience.
Yeah, I remember during the shutdown, I was here during the shutdown, which was, I could have just sat at home. So I tell Erica that a lot, but I didn't. I said, I want to be somewhere.
This was before you were a member of the church.
Yes, this is before.
Right. So
I came through, and Sister Rhoda heard me playing after church, and she was like, "We need your help." I was like, "No, you don't."
I'm staying home. I'm gonna be safe, right?
Right. No, but I came through, and we had the ABC services, so I was helping out in the C service.
Type 1 and comment, Dorothy, if you remember ABC service.
Yeah, so I was helping them out in the C service because sometimes my brother Darnell had to go somewhere or whatever, and I just remember just being so the dedication that I saw of people. This house was still full. People were still coming in. People would stay sometimes when they weren't supposed to for the other services, and I just saw it was just such a family here. And so when me and Erica decided to get married, and I know my old pastor, she still feels some kind of way about it. It was like, I didn't want Erica to leave that. And then I wanted to have it for myself, because it's not just having a family, but having a bunch of men that you can look to that have integrity, and because I think I was like one of the very one or two men that was the church I was playing at. And I was like, even if it costs me, I'm going to come through, and I'm going to, we'll grow here, and we'll let God decide the opportunities for more. And a lot of people, when I say the devil wanted me away from here so bad, I mean, the phone never stopped ringing. People were still on Facebook. Last year, somebody was trying to put some money on the table. No, I'm happy where I'm at. This is my family, and I'm not going nowhere. I'm not going nowhere. I just say that. Somebody.
That's not legal.
Yeah, somebody.
It's funny because I'm thinking back to that whole episode of COVID and shutdown. I think that you said something in terms of coming together and the family and stuff like that. I think we got a chance to see something special.
Mm-hmm.
And to come together, because you have to remember the beginning of COVID, no one really knew what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Not like it is today. And it was, for a lot of folks in their mind, a death sentence. I still remember the news when folks would get COVID, they had celebrity, like Tom Hanks' COVID. That would be front page news. But to come out, and like I said, the house ran full.
Yeah.
And it was a level of fellowship and brotherhood and sisterhood that was remarkable. And having and you coming out, you weren't a member then,
No.
but just coming out,
Yeah.
and then having the house and seeing the brothers and sisters. And if it had not been for us all coming out together, then I think people would have gotten scared. But when I saw and people saw you here, then folks came out.
Yeah, and I remember my pastor when she opened our church back up. She admitted that God didn't tell her to shut her church down.
Wow.
And I was, you in the background, you're like, I told you, but it's when you're dealing with smaller ministries,
Yeah.
and
It's hard.
it's very
tough.
hard when
It's tough.
you're seeing. Because I was there at the grocery stores where they didn't have, it wasn't soup, it wasn't noodles.
It
on the
wasn't
shelf.
nothing. I remember when they first did the first stay-at-home orders.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I went out like everybody. I was buying goosenecks, just whatever meat I could find. 'Cause I'm thinking, we never lived through a stay-at-home order. I didn't know what that mean. It was gonna be a run. So it was a very scary time. The only consistent was on Sunday. I knew where I was gonna be on Wednesday. I knew where I was gonna be on Monday night. I knew where I was gonna be. And it's something that, just having God take us through that.
Oh yeah.
And the way I feel now is having graduated, because I look at COVID as graduating from that experience. There's few now that I think that is going to shake or scare my faith in God supplying the needs for his church.
Oh yeah.
Where I don't question whether or not God is able. We saw in this church 6 months, no one got sick of COVID.
Right.
We saw that not one of our members passed away from COVID.
Right.
And I'm not, it could have been.
Right, because
It could have been.
Erica, I think, was one of the first ones to get sick here.
Well, she gave it to me.
Yeah.
Erica gave it to me.
6 months later, when they opened back up. That was-
Yeah, but no, but Erica, she
but
came
that was
in.
6 months later.
I don't care when it was.
It wasn't like during that
I
time.
remember when I got COVID, I had an assistant pastor's meeting.
Yeah.
It was one of our dear assistant pastors who had their water bottle near the meeting, and I drank from that water bottle.
Oh yeah.
And it seemed like that week everyone got sick, and that was the first time I really thought whether or not we were going to be able to get through it. And the reason being is because I didn't know what the members would do.
Oh no. And then she was in the Paul Hospital. When I say she was on the phone with me
She
every
was
day.
sick. She was sick.
She was crying. I was like,
Right.
man, I had to send her mama to get her.
Right.
She was in there.
Eric, you can shout out in the comments if you agree with all this.
But
But-
remember, that was like after everything opened back up, because during those first few months when we remained open, nobody got sick. That was 6 months later when
I see it.
Yeah.
that was that 6 months later, and that's when we first. But by then, everything was open back up.
Well, it opened and closed.
Yeah, because what happened was in the summer they opened it back up, but then so many people started getting sick.
Right.
They had to
Had
close it back
right.
down again.
Right.
But the problem, though, is that here's the thing, and again, it's a tough call, and all credit goes to God because it's not like we were so tough. God really strengthened us. But the problem is that there can be so many challenges
Oh, yeah.
in this time that anything literally could break out
Mm-hmm.
that could cause a situation where the press becomes more difficult.
Oh yeah.
And the only way to make the press less difficult is to press and succeed and have a victory to think upon.
Yeah.
And I like I said, since that whole experience, I don't have nothing can shake me in terms of stuff that is noise that happens around the church.
Right. It's a lot of because I told her it seems like there's a new content creator division that seems like they're only focusing on churches.
They
so
are, man.
it's very hard to
TikTok,
turn on any
right.
TikTok or YouTube without seeing somebody or this thing that went down to church crazy. So it's something because I still think, and I told her, I don't want to ignore all of it because a lot of it has to do with us on the musical side too, and the way that we're running things. So you still have to keep your eye and ears to the ground so hey, these things are kind of coming around. But then it kind of lets you know kind of where you stand and how you need to keep, stay prayed up, stay mindful, stay watching, that type of situation.
Right, absolutely. It's a remarkable situation, but I thank God, and He has been, and He is able.
Yeah.
He is able. He is able to keep us. And that's the thing that I come down to. But it's something to have right now, a situation where God is bringing people to the church, not just but churches, and leading them and to feel that you found a home.
Yeah.
And that's a special thing.
Oh yeah, especially when a lot of us in music ministry have gone through bad experiences and things have happened. So when you find a place and it's not just the preaching being good, because I've seen some
So
preachers
you don't
be
think
good.
preaching is good?
I think the preaching is really good, but you need more than
No,
just
you
good
do,
preaching.
right.
You need actually to have a family that's backing you. Because I've seen preachers preach good and then they leave church and it be a situation. So you want to make sure you're with somebody that is, like I said, integrity.
Right.
And if I didn't have, like I said, you, Minister Brad, and Minister Sterling, these guys that have all been Bishop Battle, if these guys wasn't men of integrity
Right.
that I couldn't stand
Right.
on, then it wouldn't encourage me.
Right.
And I know, hey, I've seen people live this life and they're not going straight, so I want to be right there with them.
Right. Integrity is a lost art.
Right.
I think even going back to the whole sports thing, and I had my son on here one time, and we were talking about how a lot of the role models that kids are looking up to in the sports entertainment industry, while they're good at their sports entertainment, they're terrible people.
Oh man.
And you're seeing young people base their personality off of these athletes and rappers and hip hop artists who are not good people.
Right.
And it's starting to affect who they become because you mimic or model what you see. And there's not enough role models, or their parents not taking them to see role models to highlight the fact that every black man is not, their mouth is filled with cuss words.
Right.
They're out here strung out. And we need to see that.
Well, and the thing, we were talking about this yesterday because they were talking about an artist who, apparently they did a TikTok where they said they sold their soul to the devil.
Mm.
And they were crying and they were being upset. And a year later, they said, I was just joking. I wasn't serious. No, we know you were serious.
Yeah, that's nothing to joke about.
Because the thing is, they want to portray this image, especially for young black girls and boys, that this is what we should be like. And to me, it seems like it's an issue where that's how the major record labels make money, perpetuating the image of us. That we are all out here wearing gold. We are out here with our pants sagging. We all out here. We're not faithful. We're not trying to be family oriented. We don't care about that.
Right.
And a lot of times it is when you get into doing music, especially in the local scenes. I'm not working with these artists. I'm not perpetuating the stereotype. I'm not, producing for these guys, cease and desist using this music that I made, because I'm not trying to be a part of that lifestyle. And we have a few young producers here that you have to let them know that your integrity is worth more than you getting a bag from a record label, because they're not going to pay you what you're worth.
Well, and you have to be deliberate about your reputation.
Yeah.
And you have to, in this culture, you have to make choices about who you are going to be and stick to that. Because I was talking to somebody the other day, young people nowadays can really smell out phony and fakeness.
Yeah.
And so if you are saying one thing on Sunday morning or something around Christians, but yet your social media profile is trash, you're hanging out, you're doing stuff that's questionable. Mm-hmm. Then people may not say anything to you, but they look at you like a joke.
Yeah.
And you cannot throw away everything that if you're not standing on these principles, then don't advertise it. Just be what you are.
We was having that same talk with, we were looking at a YouTube video where this guy he's a Christian podcaster, but he was cussing on this podcast. Wow. And so these other girls, I think the podcast they represent is called Girls Gone Bible. Mm-hmm. They actually told him, like, if when God really gets into you, because they said they started out the same way, but then they fasted and that conviction got to him.
Right.
And he said that all of a sudden now they heard somebody else cussing and it made them cringe. And it really made them feel like, oh man. So I have the same kind of issue with my son where I'm banging on his door now that he moved in. Language.
Right.
I don't care who you on the game with. I don't care what they got going on.
Right.
You are in this house. And in this house, we want to make sure that we're not
Right.
cussing folks out and stuff online.
Right.
And you
Well, I
see
remember
me do
growing
it.
up in the church. I grew up in this church.
Right.
And you know, Tara. And I didn't get saved until in college.
Right.
So growing up, there was all these influences.
Oh, yeah.
And you had, listen to stuff that you knew was not Christian,
Right.
savory, whatever. But the thing is that at least, and thank God that there were parents there,
Mhm.
and there was a level of fear, because I grew up in a day and age, people feared preachers.
Ooh.
People were afraid of preachers.
Mhm.
People were afraid of church mothers. People thought that if I came to church and I know what I did, but there's going to be someone with discernment that's
Yeah.
going to point out.
Are they gonna
everything
look?
right.
They gonna look at you and tell you what you
Trying
did.
to tell you what
wrong.
you did. And so there was this level of stuff that nowadays you don't have anymore. And Christian parents are almost signing off and not choosing to take what they learned at church and take it home. Beat on the door and say, listen, we're not a family that cusses. I know you ain't saved, but in this house, it's a cuss-free house.
Yeah.
You know,
And it's a culture war going on between.
it's a culture war.
Because certain churches are more about, I would say we call them seeker friendly.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, if you see, I always say, if you see the red keyboard, you know what time it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they have so much going into the lights, camera, action,
Mm-hmm.
and they got like a whole hour-long praise and worship,
Mhm.
but then a 20-minute sermon,
Right.
then
It's
you're
a
not.
mismatch.
You're getting fed something that you may, and I'm not saying that, hey, that's because we do it differently. I'm not criticizing how everybody does everything, but if they are worried more about the sounds on the keyboard or is Ableton working right, is the click tracks here and there. If you worried more about praise and worship and the sound and that situation, then you worried about the word going forward, then, that's a whole situation. And I really had to learn a lot since I've been here that, setting the atmosphere is so important,
Mhm.
but it's not more important than the word that you're setting the atmosphere for.
It's powerful.
And
Yeah.
so a lot of that situation, they try to pull you into different directions, or I've been invited to other churches to help them set stuff up there. And it's like, they don't understand that it's not how good you play. I'm sorry. It's not how good you play. Because you can play and you can run, 7s to 8s all up and down the keyboard. But if your heart ain't in it,
Yes, right.
then it's just a bag. You go home on Sunday and God is not working here. But it's what you playing from here. It's what you sing and what you do from here. That's what God wants.
Right.
He don't want this.
No. And the Holy Ghost makes everything better.
Right.
It makes a cook better. It makes a preacher preach better. A musician play better.
Right.
And I think when we stop seeking the anointing versus
Right.
talent, then there's a big difference between talent versus the anointing.
Yeah. So that's something that me and her, we have her being a director, we have a talk about a lot, where we just want to make sure that, we're being skilled, we're being talented,
Right.
but we're making room for the spirit, we're making room for the atmosphere.
And I thank God for the music ministry here, yourself, your wife, Taraja, Tara, Larissa, Kent, Sterling, Rachel,
Say music
Brother O,
ministry gang.
all the music ministry. Y'all are wonderful.
We got
And all these
talented
folks
guys.
stuck through, and we all went through that period together.
Oh, yeah.
Something else.
We are so blessed to have so many talented singers here, and we all do well. I think Erica, we had us talk sometimes when we go to other churches and sing and present. And it's such powerful, especially between Taraja, Stewart, Rachel,
Stewart.
and Stewart's went out and won awards, and he's doing
very good
well.
singer, yeah.
And just to be a part of it, I learned so much just from working with these singers, and it carries down to the kids as well, the young adults and the children.
They're doing a remarkable job.
So
Well, brother, I appreciate you, man. This has been an extended marathon version.
Hey, I appreciate being
We just wanted
here.
to come and we won't have you back, and you and your wife
Oh
as
yeah,
your own guest.
yeah. So she could tell her side.
Yeah, you know what? we may have some microphone troubles when she gets on. Tell her own side.
Yeah, cut the mic.
Yeah, cut the mic. Brother, we having a Super Bowl party, and I'm looking forward to it, man.
Oh yeah, Super Bowl
Yeah,
fellowship.
Super Bowl fellowship. Will you get ready for that?
Oh
You
yeah,
making
yeah.
something?
No,
No.
no, we got several brothers bringing Rotel and sisters bringing a few things. So,
Sisters, see? I thought it was all on your brothers.
well, sisters are bringing.
Oh,
They're not staying.
that's-
It's like you drop that and God gonna bless you.
Yeah, right. You heard me here, right? Well, all right, my brother. Appreciate it.
All right.
All right, viewers, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for listening. Erica says something. Go, Sheila, take that down real quick. Thank God for all of you all, and we hope you enjoyed this extended discussion on HOD Live.
Yeah.